Hello everyone. In today's session, we are going to discuss gender based violence. In the previous topics, we learned how gender stereotypes, socialization, and unequal gender roles can affect both women and men. But what happens when these unhealthy attitudes go one step further? They can lead to gender based violence. When you hear the word violence, what comes to your mind? Most of us immediately think of someone hitting or physically hurting another person. This is called physical violence. It includes acts such as hitting, slapping, kicking, pushing, burning, or causing any kind of physical injury. Physical violence is the easiest form to recognize because the injuries are often visible. But is violence only physical? Constant humiliation, insults, threats, intimidation, and controlling someone's behavior are all forms of emotional violence. Imagine a husband who never raises his hand against his wife. People might think he is a good husband, but every day he insults her, controls her money, decides whom she can talk to, and constantly tells her she is worthless. Is this violence? Absolutely yes. Because violence is not only about hurting someone's body, it is also about hurting someone's mind, dignity, freedom, and self respect. Even if there are no physical injuries, people can leave terrible emotional scars on others. Sometimes emotional wounds last much longer than physical wounds. A joke may seem harmless to one person but deeply hurt another. Respect begins by considering how our words and actions affect others. So, gender based violence refers to any harmful act directed at another person because of their gender. Although women, men, and people of diverse gender identities can experience gender based violence, women and girls are affected disproportionately worldwide. Why does gender based violence happen? Many people think violence happens simply because someone loses their temper. But in reality, it often begins much earlier. It begins with unhealthy beliefs. When someone grows up believing that one gender is superior to another, or one person has the right to control another, or violence is acceptable to maintain authority, all these attitude can slowly turn into abusive behavior. This is exactly why we studied gender stereotypes and socialization in the previous topics. When unhealthy ideas are accepted without questioning them, they develop into discrimination and eventually into violence. Gender based violence appears in many forms. Sometimes it leaves bruises on the body, sometimes it leaves scars only on the mind. Sometimes the victim is not even aware that what they're experiencing is actually violence. Let us look at some of the common forms. One of the most harmful forms of gender based violence is sexual violence. Sexual violence includes any unwanted sexual act or behavior without a person's consent. The most important word here is consent. Consent means a person freely agrees to be intimate with another person without fear, pressure, manipulation, or force. Silence is not consent. Fear is not consent. Being in a relationship or marriage is not automatic consent. Every individual has the right to decide what happens to their own body. Respecting consent is one of the most important aspects of healthy relationships. One of the most common forms of sexual violence is sexual harassment. Sexual harassment means any unwelcome behavior of a sexual nature that makes another person feel uncomfortable, unsafe, embarrassed, or threatened. Sexual harassment can happen in colleges, workplaces, public places, and even online. It may include making inappropriate comments, repeated proposals after receiving clear refusal, sharing offensive messages or images, passing sexual jokes, staring in a way that makes someone uncomfortable, unwanted touching, creating an environment where a person feels unsafe. All these acts amount to sexual harassment under the law. If the victim is below 18 years of age, the offense may come under the Protection of Children from Sexual Offenses, which is POCSO Act. Why is sexual violence taken so seriously? Imagine walking through your college corridor and someone passes a vulgar comment. Or imagine traveling in a crowded bus and someone deliberately touches you inappropriately and disappears into the crowd. The incident may last only a few seconds, but for some people, those few seconds may affect their lives for years. Why? Because sexual violence is not just an attack on the body, it is an attack on a person's sense of safety, dignity, and trust. Although women and girls experience sexual violence at much higher rates, it is important to remember that boys and men can also become victims. Unfortunately, many male survivors remain silent and suffer alone because they fear being mocked at or ridiculed. There is a general misconception that victims always scream, fight back, or run away when they face sexual abuse. But our brain does not always work that way. When faced with extreme fear, our body may respond in three different ways: fight, flight, or freeze. During the freeze response, a person may be unable to speak, move, or react even though they desperately want to. This is an automatic survival response. It is not consent, and it should never be used to blame a victim. The effects of sexual violence are often invisible. Some survivors avoid public places, become anxious while traveling alone, lose confidence, struggle to trust others, experience anxiety, depression, panic attacks, sleep problems, nightmares, or symptoms of post traumatic stress disorder. Their academic performance, career, friendships, and relationships, everything can collapse. People react differently after going through such incidents. Some cry, some become silent, some appear completely normal on the outside while carrying immense pain within. There is no correct way to respond to trauma. That is why we should never judge someone's experience by the way they behave outwardly. Instead, we should listen with empathy, believe them, and encourage them to seek help. Now, what should someone do if they experience sexual violence? If anyone goes through sexual violence, their first priority should be ensuring their own safety. Once they are safe, they should share the incident with a trusted adult. It could be a parent, teacher, counselor, guardian, or another responsible adult. Many survivors stay silent because of fear, shame, or the worry that they will not be believed. But remember this: silence never protects the victim, silence protects only the offender. Speaking up may not be easy, it could be difficult, but it is the first step towards justice, healing, and preventing others from becoming victims in future. Domestic violence. Another common form of gender based violence is domestic violence. Home is supposed to be the safest place in a person's life. But sadly, for many women, the home itself is the most dangerous place. Domestic violence happens inside families or intimate relationships. Many people think it only means physical assault. No, it can also include constant insults, humiliating someone every day, controlling their money, threatening them, stopping them from meeting family or friends, forcing them to do things against their wishes, or constantly making them feel afraid inside their own home. These wounds may not always leave bruises on the body, but they leave deep scars on the mind. Many years ago, society looked at domestic violence very differently. People believed that whatever happened inside a family was a private matter. Women were often told to adjust. Then something very disturbing began to happen. During the late 1970s and 1980s, India witnessed a sudden rise in the deaths of newly married women. Many deaths were reported as kitchen accidents or stove bursts. Women's organization began noticing this and asked an important question: why were these accidents happening mostly to newly married women? In fact, these women had already faced dowry harassment in the past. And why was it usually the bride who died while everyone else remained safe? Gradually, people realized that many of these were not accidents, but cases of cruelty and violence. This changed the way our society looked at domestic violence. Today, we understand that violence inside the home is not a private family matter. It is a serious crime and a violation of human rights. Unfortunately, this problem has not disappeared. According to the National Crime Records Bureau 2022, 6,516 women lost their lives in registered dowry death cases. That is around 18 women every single day. In the same year, more than 1.4 lakh cases of cruelty by husbands or their relatives were officially registered. And remember, these are only the reported cases. Many women never report abuse because they fear society or worry about their children, or they are financially dependent on their husband. Some women hope that their husband will change in future. Some fear that if they speak up, the violence will become even worse. So they continue suffering in silence. Domestic violence does not always end in murder. Years of humiliation, fear, and emotional abuse can destroy a person's confidence and mental health and may even lead to suicide. Financial or economic violence. Suppose a woman is educated and wants to work, but her family prevents her from taking a job. Or imagine she earns money, but her husband takes her salary and controls every rupee. Or she is denied money for food, healthcare, or basic needs. This is economic violence. Money is not just currency, it can give a person the freedom to make choices, decide how to live their life, and build an independent life. When someone else controls your money, they can also control you and your life. Stalking. Following someone repeatedly, waiting outside their college or workplace, constantly calling or messaging, tracking their movements, or creating fake accounts to watch them online are all forms of stalking. Love, respect, boundaries. Stalking violates boundaries. Violence against lesser women or lesser men. Sometimes people are targeted simply because they do not fit into society's expectations. Who decides what a real woman or what a real man is? Many boys are taught that a real man should have physical strength. They should never cry, win every fight, earn money, and dominate others. Over time, these notions have become so normal that many believe that anger is strength and aggression is proof of masculinity. As a result, some boys are bullied simply because they are gentle, sensitive, quiet, enjoy art instead of sports, or express emotions openly. They may be mocked as not man enough. For thousands of years, when humans lived in forests and survival depended largely on physical strength, aggression sometimes played a role in protection. But society has changed. Today, our greatest strengths are wisdom, emotional intelligence, communication, cooperation, and respect for the law. Yet, some parents and adults, often without realizing it, continue encouraging boys to fight for their pride or ego instead of teaching them healthier ways to respond to conflict. A single fight can lead to serious injuries, permanent disability, criminal charges, imprisonment, or even the loss of a young life. Real courage is not proving your strength through violence. It is walking away from unnecessary conflict, controlling your anger, and asking for help when you need it. No boy should ever be told that he is less of a man because he is kind, gentle, emotional, or chooses peace over violence. Similarly, strong, outspoken, or ambitious women may be criticized for stepping outside traditional gender roles, whether they want to climb mountains, travel alone, or pursue unconventional careers. This is also a form of gender based violence because people are punished for not fitting expected gender roles. Violence against transgender persons. There is one more group that often faces gender based violence but is rarely spoken about: transgender persons. Many people assume that only men and women exist. Anyone whose gender identity or expression does not fit society's expectation is often treated unfairly. They are mocked, bullied, face discrimination, verbally abused, physically attacked, or excluded from social gatherings simply because they are different. Can you see how irrational it is? Who decided that every human being must behave in only one particular way? Human beings are naturally diverse. Just as people differ in personality, talents, and interests, they may also differ in how they experience or express their gender. Instead of trying to understand this diversity, the society refuses to accept it. That is why transgender persons continue to experience much higher levels of bullying, harassment, and violence than many other groups. At the end of the day, every human being deserves the same dignity, safety, and respect. No one should face violence simply because they do not fit someone else's idea of how a person should be. Cyber violence. Today, violence has entered our mobile phones as well. Cyber violence includes online bullying, sharing someone's private photographs without permission, creating fake social media profiles, spreading false rumors online, and sending threatening or abusive messages. Just because something happens online doesn't make it less serious. The emotional damage can be just as severe. Human trafficking. Human trafficking is one of the most serious human rights violations. Traffickers may promise jobs, education, marriage, or a better life. Once victims are trapped, they may be forced into sexual exploitation, domestic servitude, begging, illegal work, or other forms of exploitation. Victims are often isolated, threatened, and deprived of freedom. Trafficking is not a movie story, it is a real crime affecting thousands of vulnerable people. Acid attacks. Acid attacks are among the most brutal forms of violence. A person intentionally throws acid on another person, usually after rejection, to seek revenge. The victim may suffer lifelong disfigurement, loss of eyesight, severe pain, and deep emotional trauma. What is even more disheartening is that some people try to justify this violence by saying, I loved that person so much that I could not bear to see them leave me. If you truly love someone, you respect their decision. If your first instinct after rejection is to attack, disfigure, or destroy another human being, how can you ever call this love? It is jealousy, hatred, wounded ego, and a desire to control and punish. Nothing can ever justify this level of cruelty. Honor based violence. Sometimes families believe that their honor is more important than an individual's freedom. A young woman may be threatened because she chose her own partner. A young man may be attacked because he married outside his caste or community. This kind of violence does not protect honor. What it truly does is destroying lives. The victim suffers physical injuries, fear, trauma, and the loss of their freedom. The family also is left with grief, guilt, and the lifelong pain of harming their own daughter or son in the name of honor. There is nothing honorable about violence. True honor lies in respecting another person's dignity, freedom, and right to choose. Child marriage and forced marriage. Every person has the right to decide whether to marry, when to marry, and whom to marry. Forcing someone into marriage, especially before they are physically and emotionally mature, can interrupt education, affect health, and limit future opportunities. Marriage should be a choice, not a compulsion. Dowry related violence. Marriage should be based on love and mutual respect, not money. Demanding cash, property, vehicles, or expensive gifts before or after marriage can lead to harassment, domestic violence, and even death. No human should ever be treated as a financial transaction. People often ask, if someone is suffering abuse, why don't they just leave? The answer is not always simple. Some people stay because they are financially dependent. Some worry about their children. Some fear society's judgment. Some people have nowhere else to go. Some hope the person will change in future. And some are afraid that leaving may make the violence even worse. Instead of blaming victims, we should try to understand the difficulties they face and support them with empathy. So, as educated citizens, what we can do about this? One thing we all can do is not to normalize abuse. Never make jokes about violence. Never make jokes about any kind of abuse. And if someone trusts you enough to share their suffering, listen without judging them. Encourage them to seek help from trusted family members, teachers, counselors, or the appropriate authorities. Sometimes, simply believing a victim and standing beside them can change their life. When we talk about gender based violence, we often think only about women. But gender roles can harm men too, and sometimes with devastating consequences. Look at the numbers. Around 81% of homicide victims globally are men and boys. Men are far more likely to die from violence in public spaces, street fights, gangs, conflicts, etc. The concept of masculinity that we have today need to be blamed for this. It encourages aggression and violence, which ultimately lead to such untimely deaths or lifelong injuries. Women, on the other hand, face a different and serious danger. Among female homicide victims, around 56% are killed by intimate partners or family members. So, women are particularly vulnerable to violence within relationships and inside the home. And if we also consider suicide, men account for a much larger share of suicide deaths globally. So, if we ask which gender is more affected by violence, there is no simple one word answer. Women and men experience violence differently, and gender expectation play a very significant role in both. That is why gender sensitization is not about choosing one gender over another. It is about questioning the gender roles that harm human beings. It is also about creating a society where no one has to suffer simply because of the gender role society has assigned to them. Thank you all once again. See you in the next class.